Everyone, and welcome to Doodle Therapy, a interactive drawing show here on Adobe Live, where we come together to doodle, relax, and learn something new about drawing. We're on here on Adobe Live every other week, and every week that we're on, we bring on a special guest. We chat with that guest about their art journey, their story, and we deep dive into a new topic every week so that we can learn something new from the guest as well as each other. I'm your host, Alice. I am an illustrator and a muralist. I am based in the SF Bay Area, formerly in Taipei. And it's great to be back and to see everyone. If you are joining us live, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say hi. You could say your name, where you're joining us from. And we always have a random question of the day. So because of our theme for today, which is drawing our memories, and we'll explain that in a second. My random question of the day to you is, what kind of music did you listen to when you were in middle school? And who was your favorite musical artist or band? Would love to know. And Laura and I will be answering that as well. So this week, I'm really excited to introduce our special guest. She is a techie turned artist and graphic novelist whose debut graphic novel memoir is coming out next year and was just put up for pre-orders today. And she's currently based in Taipei, Taiwan. So please join me in welcoming Laura. Welcome, Laura.
Hey.
It's great to have you, and thanks for joining us from all the way from Taipei. I know it's really early in the morning over there.
Yeah, no, it's been really great. I just kind of stayed up all night. So I'm like jacked up on caffeine.
Oh, dang. I've got my boba over here as well.
Nice.
Cool. So yeah, I'm seeing some fun responses in the chat. So welcome into everyone who's introduced themselves already, to Laura, Lauren S, to Axel, to Sam, Ronnie. Sam says that Blink 182 is their jam. Lauren S says Boys to Men. These are some good classic nice. Jams. And Laura and I will, say our favorite music band in just a sec when we introduce Laura in more detail. But first of all, I just want to say welcome to everyone and kind of, give a little spiel on Doodle Therapy if this is your first time joining us. So basically every week we have a different doodle prompt that is related to the guest's area of expertise or artistic interests. In the past, we've done children's book illustrations, comics. Today, since Laura's, graphic novel is a memoir and it's coming out soon, we thought it'd be really fun for everyone to illustrate our memories in a sequential comics format. So for today, I've actually put together a little template if you would like to draw along with us that you can access in the description below. So as we kind of introduce ourselves, you could get that set up on the technical side. And that's also why Laura and I are dressed up in kind of like an emo style, because it's like an homage to the classic emo hit, Thanks for the Memories by Fall Out Boy. Hence the question about what was your favorite middle school band or artist. So yeah, if you'd like to draw along, we will be drawing our memories in a sequential comics format.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Laura. I am currently a full-time comic artist. I was a techie turned artist. So I used to work at Twitter as a product manager. And then I got the opportunity to write and draw my very first graphic novel, which is a memoir about my life as a queer Asian American immigrant growing up in small town Texas. And so this is similar to a lot of comics I've made before, which mainly are autobiographical. I've made a lot of comics about kind of like my own coming of age, like finding my own Asian identity, dealing with my very like Asian parents, and like bridging that third culture gap, as well as like my own coming out story too. And so it's really great to culminate all of that into this one book called Messy Roots. And a lot of my style, as you can kind of see here, is drawing a lot of what I know of different like foods that I like, or different like sketches of memories of like me and my cousins, or like me and my family going to Wuhan, my hometown, or growing up in Texas.
Awesome.
Oh, and
Thanks
then my favorite music.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would say, yeah, Fall Out Boy definitely was such a banger back in the day. I think in middle school, when I was going through my like punk emo phase, definitely a lot of Green Day.
Green Day.
I remember I loved this one song by Simple Plan, where like I would just like sit in my bed and be like crying, and like I remember the lyrics were like, "Hey dad, look at me, like am I the person you thought I would grow up to be?" Like, and I remember just like crying to that like every day.
Wow.
and like being
All
like
the
super
feels.
angsty with it.
Yeah, all the feels. So relatable.
All the feels.
Yeah. Jeffrey says Linkin Park, very classic. Classic as well. I definitely liked the Linkin Park Jay-Z collab album, as random as that was. I think that came out in high school for me. Axel says Emo Mage, very cool. And Uriel, thank you for saying the name of the Simple Plan song, which is Perfect, that Laura was referring to.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're just joining us now, welcome, Rachel. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can share your name, where you're joining us from. And our random question of the day is, what was your favorite middle school band or artist that you just loved listening to? So for me, I'm an illustrator and a muralist based in SF. Some of my work's above. I would say my, favorite middle school bands were pretty similar. Green Day, Yellow Card. I'm not sure if that's like a West Coast thing. They have a song called Ocean Avenue. Classic. Every time I am on a Ocean Avenue, I think of that song. Ronnie says Guns N' Roses. Uriel says The Cure. Yes, and also saying that Collision Course, the Linkin Park Jay-Z collab album. So that's really exciting, and it's a nice segue into our prompt for the day. It looks like Laura's getting set up on her end with Photoshop, but I will kind of go over as we set that up. I'll just kind of switch over to my screen so we can figure that out on Laura's end. So we are going to be drawing some of our childhood memories today. So this is, I think, a really fun prompt because everyone has memories. It's just a matter of deciding what you want to draw and putting that into some kind of sequential format. Another cool thing is that Laura has sent over some high-res versions of examples of some, memories that she's created for her graphic novel. So, for example, here we've got, maybe I'll scoot over here. Cool. Looks like we're all set up. So here, this is, I think an excerpt from Laura's upcoming book. Do you mind telling us a little bit about this piece and, how you thought about creating it?
Yeah, so this page is part of a chapter in which I'm talking about Lunar New Year and all the different foods that my mom would cook for us during Lunar New Year. She had a lot of influence from my grandparents, who my whole family is from Wuhan. So there's a lot of Wuhanese cuisine influence. And one thing in particular that I've always really loved were her spring rolls. And so here I've captured every single step of the way that she makes spring rolls. And even to this day, out of the countless Chinese restaurants I've gone to, I still have not been able to find spring rolls that are that's beaten hers. So yeah, so I've
it's the highest
praise.
It
is. Yeah, Mama Gal knows her spring rolls so well. But yeah, as you can see, the first three panels show the different steps And then the very last panel, I guess like that one's not really a panel. I just kind of like widen it to be the entire page, to where the last part you see the actual finished egg rolls and someone's grabbing it with chopsticks, and then you see the rest of the whole dinner table set up. I also like wanted to show kind of like the East versus the West, with my brother grabbing pizza, because my brother was like born in the States and he doesn't really like to eat Chinese food. So my mom would always make something like American for him to eat at the dinner table.
I see. Yeah. And I love the way that you laid this out. I think that comics, like composition of panels, is so interesting to study in comics, and it's like underratedly hard. You know, like you don't think it's hard, but like, I mean, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you know, you kind of take it for granted as a viewer. And then like, I think once you really try to dissect it, you see like how intricate and unique some of these layouts are. Like, I love how you put the steps of making the spring roll here. And then like behind it, you have this full scene that's kind of like, you know, exploding outwards. But then you also have the chopsticks that are like in front. So it creates this like really cool layering. And, you know, just kind of going through your work, I feel like this theme of like really interesting compositions is, definitely inspiring for me. Like, I love how, for example, you've got, these are like memory, this is a chapter like header, it seems like, for one of the chapters in your book. So I just love that you have pulled out like these vignettes from your past memories. And then you've also put like little, you know, trinkets and things that you might find on a, you know, desk or something on top. Like, I think that's so clever. And then you've got like dialogue here too. So that's like a cool, I think, you know, piece of inspiration for our prompt today, which is to do something similar. And create and draw some memories that we've had in the past. So yeah, if you'd like to draw along, you know, Laura and I will spend the next 10 or so minutes just like sketching out some memories. So please feel free to think about what memories you would like to capture and illustrate in sequence, as we'll, you know, start sketching now. Do you know what you're going to, you know, draw, and like what your memories will be of, Laura?
Yeah, I have been thinking a lot about my time here in Taiwan. I've been here since February, but I think my time is probably coming to a close pretty soon. So I want to draw a couple of my favorite memories in Taiwan.
Oh, cool.
What about you?
Love it. So I wanted to draw, taking a page from your book, which, you know, draws upon your childhood. I wanted to illustrate memories from my childhood, specifically with my grandma, who passed away earlier this year. But I used to go back to China like every summer, and we'd have these hilarious memories from childhood. Like, here's, I've sketched out, you know, some of really roughly what I want to draw. So for the sketch part, you know, I'll be refining the sketches. But for example, like, I don't know what adult okayed this, but like, my cousin and I, who are the same age, we were like obsessed with Sprite. And so every week we would get like, you know, those giant liters of Sprite? We would each get one like liter thing of Sprite. And that was our like Sprite allotment for the week. And it like every time at the, you know, Sunday, we would go to the convenience store downstairs and we would each just like hold our like giant thing of Sprite, and like, you know, I would kind of ration it out. My cousin would just immediately drink it the first day. And it's kind of funny to me looking back, because I now know like how bad soda is. And like, I don't know who okayed this, but yeah. Just like little memories. That's like so that. Funny. Like, yeah, my grandma used to make really awesome food. Oh yeah. You know, we'd go to buy groceries in the downstairs, like, pop-up market. That'd be people like, you know, selling carrots with wheelbarrows, you know, and stuff like that. Like right outside was so
they have all
packed.
The stands right outside. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it would just like disappear, you know, by noon. And it would be really crowded. So she like would know everyone, weave through the crowd, and she would like hold me, like, this is my hand. And she would like, you know, grasp onto my wrist and just kind of like pull me along. And I was, you know, just happy to be there because I liked spending time with her. So I wanted to commemorate some of these these memories, especially in sequence. And another fun thing about our template is that, so I've put out like 3 panels that you can draw your memories in, that I will be drawing my memories in. It looks like Laura has kind of a similar layout with like 4 Polaroids. But one thing I took inspiration from Laura's illustration is I just really like how she like mixes and like layers things on top of each other. So I think it's fun to like think about a item of some sort that was maybe meaningful or related to your memories. So in this case, for example, I have a type of candy that I really liked eating, white rabbit candy. And I think it's really fun to just, yeah. Oh, what did I say? White rabbit. Oh, and I think it's fun to just like put it on top, and then it kind of gives your piece this like fun layered look, as opposed to just being like 3 grids of memories, which is fine too. But I just think this sort of composition is a little bit more interesting. So yeah, if you'd like to draw along, please feel free to, pull from our template, or you can also just grab a piece of paper and just, draw whatever memories come to mind. Let's see. I'm seeing in the chat, Axel says that he loves your color palette and you have great flow in your compositions, Laura. Reverb Mike says, if the spring rolls aren't good, they don't go back to that restaurant. Axel has a really interesting point, which is that it can be hard to pull from trauma and draw it. And he says he struggles with that, and that's the real stuff. So I'm curious, like, how you go about balancing that, because it's like, I guess on some level, it's also very vulnerable to like share stories, especially if they're about times where you didn't feel accepted or you didn't have as much like self-acceptance. But that's also like a very raw and real story. So I'm curious about how you approach that.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And in my book has a lot of traumatic moments for sure, where I like, in Texas didn't feel accepted as like one of the few queer people of color. And there were like many traumatic moments that like I felt like I had repressed, and then for the book I had to draw up again. Honestly, like a lot of therapy helped. But when I stare at like some of my traumatic chapters, are ones that took like 3 times longer than all my like funny chapters and like the more, like the less traumatic ones. I think for those, I had to just like constantly sort of remind myself to like let myself feel what I was feeling then. And then also remember that like as I'm drawing this, I'm drawing it for both the reader and myself. Like in a way, by expressing it and putting it on page, it's as if I'm like talking to myself, and that like helped me process a lot of the trauma as I was drawing it too. And by having to like retell the story in a different way, well, before, you're like repressing all of it, but like having to retell it, it really helps you like work through every nuance of that emotion. So while it's hard, it's like honestly super rewarding at the end of the day.
Very interesting. Yeah. Do you ever have stuff where it fits into your story? Like maybe you're telling, some narrative about like a period of your life, and there's something really traumatic that happened, but you just don't want to publish it. Like, do you ever have times where you just decide like, I'm not going to share this story. I'm not going to post it on Twitter because I just need more time?
Yeah, there have been. I remember last year when, beginning of last year, I went through like a really, really bad breakup. And that breakup like put me at like one of my lowest points. And honestly, like beginning of last year was pretty bad in general with the pandemic, and then my family, all being from Wuhan. And I had a really good friend of mine like pass away suddenly too. And so all of that was just like really hard moment. But I remember like to kind of get out of it, I started drawing a new comic that was it was about this girl traversing through the universe, and she would go through every single planet, and each planet represented a different stage of grief that she was going through, and like she like
Wow.
had to like overcome something at each planet. And
That's
that
beautiful.
comic I spent, thank you. Yeah, I purposely made that to where like as I was going through each stage, I would complete each chapter of that comic, and like a chapter would be that planet, right? And to
Right.
this day, I still haven't completed it, and it's not that like I'm not fully like I obviously am still healing, as with like everyone who's still healing from 2020. But at the same time, like it just feels so. This one feels so personal, so raw, that it probably will be a while of distance before I'm ready to share it with folks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for sharing that. That's a really beautiful concept as well.
Thank you.
Let's see. In the chat, Sarah Williams wants to know, what do you recommend for someone who can't remember good memories? Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of like what we were just talking about with maybe you don't want to share negative memories if it's something you haven't processed yet. Some simple prompts could be memories from like the last week or memories from the last year, especially since we are all like in this crazy time where things are just changing. Like in the US, for example, like the pandemic is, slowly easing and like coming to an end. So I think people are like rediscovering things that they could do beforehand, as well as like reflecting on the last year and a half. So you can try to think about memories, whether good or bad, from that time, from the last year, or to answer your question, Vivek, this is not about whiteboard animation, but we are drawing some memories in a comic format today. And welcome in to Rory, to Vivek, to Christian, who's joining us from Latin America. Welcome. Revert Bike also says you can make up your own memories. That's true. You could like come up with, that becomes more like fiction, but maybe it's like based on something that happened. So it's like semi-autobiographical. So that could work as well. In this memory that I'm
and
drawing,
you can also like,
oh yeah, no, go for it.
Yeah. Just saying, like, kind of like what I did with the girl traversing through the planets. Like you can definitely like fictionalize it, or like maybe like make it into like a magical realism or some symbolized story, to where if you're not ready to draw like the actual raw emotions, you can at least draw something fantastical that is related to it. And also like, yeah, just like think about the small things in life, where I used to do this thing where I would draw a like short 10-minute comic at the end of each day, and I would just think into like one memory or like one moment of that day I had where I just truly felt, just like good in general. Like it could be something as small as like I got a burrito and I absolutely loved it, or like I saw a bird that was flying beautifully like over the sunset, and they could just be like very small moments, and I would just draw that as a comic. So yeah, like I think hopefully people have nice small moments of the day that they can call upon.
Yeah, that's what Lauren in the chat was also saying. Start with the small things you love, like spring rolls. You could do like things, something that you made recently that you enjoyed. It could be like a multi-step thing, like maybe you cooked a dish and it was like the steps for that, or you worked on a DIY project and the steps that you took to finish that. So yeah. So Laura, do you mind telling us a little bit about, your process with the book right now? Because we saw on Twitter today that you have opened it up for pre-orders, which is really exciting. And I think that the way you went about like developing the book is really interesting, especially like you've mentioned to me that you work with a colorist. So, you know, you do a lot of like the story and like the basic, like the lines. I might be using the wrong words, by the way, so feel free to correct me.
Yeah.
The line work, and then, you know, you work with colorists to develop like the color story, and even just like the background of the book, like how you wrote a comic that like went viral, and then that's how you like found your agent.
Yeah, I can probably start from the beginning. So this was April of last year. I This is like kind of connecting to like what we were discussing before. I was still kind of recuperating from a lot of like the many traumatic moments that happened in 2020. And one thing I like couldn't do for a while was that I couldn't draw. I couldn't do anything that like made me feel happy. But then finally I was like, I need to get out of my rut. And I found something that I cared about so much that I had to draw. And for me at the time, it was dispelling anti-Asian racism that was happening, and also like just celebrating my hometown for what I knew it as this like beautiful, amazing place with amazing food, culture, people that I felt like so many people had overlooked because of the pandemic. And so I finally decided to draw a comic about that called The Wuhan I Know. And also to address like the anti-Asian racism that was happening. You know, I was not expecting it, but I posted it on Twitter and it went viral. And after it went viral, that's when I started getting my opportunities where my agent reached out, and I had a couple of like publishers and editors reach out just like through Twitter DM and stuff. So that was pretty crazy. And like at the time,
That is crazy.
I was still working at Twitter, and I like had zero idea that like anything like this would even be possible. But it just was a dream come true to like be able to do art full time. So that's kind of like how the book got started. It was like people were asking me like, oh, what other stories do you want to tell? Like, you know, like what else about your childhood or like your hometown or your culture do you want to talk about? And so when I first started, my process is I always start with the writing first. So I would create a script similar to like a movie script where I've done this for all of my comics so far, is that I see a lot of them as like storyboards, or you know, I would start with kind of like a screenplay of the comic, and then after I wrote out the script would look something like you know, here's the art that you would see, here's the dialogue that you might see the character say, here's the transition that would happen, the scene change, and then I would work with my editor to kind of finalize and tidy up that script. And once we're at a really good point, then I start with thumbnails. And thumbnails are kind of like what you see here, where there's like super rough drawings of like different panels that I want to draw with the script. And I use the thumbnailing a lot of times to, I'm trying to see if I have an example of my thumbnails that I can show. Let's see.
We're getting a look at the inner workings.
These are all my files. I did most of the book on Procreate and then some on Photoshop as well. Oh yeah, here are the thumbnails.
Dang.
So as you can see, they're like super rough. But you know, each of these is a page, and I use this to kind of map out the different panels. And I map out like what, you know, scenes will be there, what people. I haven't drawn dialogue yet, but I generally like will leave space for where I think dialogue will go. I write myself like little notes and stuff too that go across. So yeah, these are, and then
yeah. So what is your process like then after because I know you mentioned you work with colorists, so then
yes,
after you go through rounds of like editing with like the story, and then you like color it in at some point you add dialogue, question mark, and then you add in color.
Yeah.
Is that? I see.
So it would be like after the thumbnails, then it would be inking, like drawing the actual lines and inking. And then after that is when, and then after that, I would like add speech bubbles for dialogue. And at the very end is when kind of coloring comes in. And I worked with my colorist named Wei Wishu, and she's like absolutely phenomenal. Like she did such an amazing job with this. And the color would be added after that. And then at the very end, that's when all the dialogue will be like typeset. And then I had a letter or like someone who does like typing in the dialogue into the speech bubbles at HarperCollins who like did that.
Oh, I see. Oh, so they do the typing of the speech. How did they know how big to like make the speech bubble then? Or do you just do the art? Like, because I can imagine if you like drew a scene and then there's like dialogue on it, and then the dialogue ends up covering like half of the art, then when you're doing the art, you probably just wouldn't bother drawing like the background in for that part.
Yeah. So for that, I generally like in Procreate or Photoshop, I would kind of like type it out roughly so that I would know like how big to leave the art. And that would be like how I would suss out like what size that would be. But the script was like continuously changing, so it was just a lot of revisions where like we had multiple passes where like the letter would like place all the text, and then if I had to like change a panel or like maybe the text was covering up an art or vice versa, then I would like kind of go through, edit it, and then the letter would try again.
I see. Interesting. That's cool to know. Thank you for sharing that with us. I also want to answer a quick question in the chat. Oh, great. So Leisha wants to know if there's a way to download your own fonts to the Photoshop app. Definitely. As what Sam said, you just download the fonts from different websites and then you can like install it on your computers on your own. So like, for example, if you're on a MacBook, you download the font and then usually you double click it. It opens up Font Book, and then there's like a button that says install font, and that installs up in your computer. And then once it's installed in your computer, then you can open it up in Photoshop or Illustrator. Cool. So we're sort of, finishing, at least on my end, I'm just kind of like drawing in the final lines that I want to color in for my Memories comic. I think for this, since it's a more complicated piece, I think I'm just going to color in lines as opposed to my normal approach, which is more shape-based. To answer your question, Leisha, I'm not certain about the iPad. You might just want to Google that because I think it also depends on the programs that you're using. So let us know if you find out, though. We got an earlier question from Vivek, which is, what do you think the future for the printed comics industry is now in 2021? And I definitely have thoughts as well. But yeah, I mean, for me at least, I feel like I've seen an explosion of graphic novels like recently entering the scene. Like I recently read this wonderful graphic novel for kids, basically called Pilu of the Woods, and it's so good. And I feel like when I was growing up, there were some graphic novel books, but they were more in the format of superhero graphic novels as opposed to someone's memoir or like a fictional story, for young adults or for teens. And so I just feel like the art form is like really growing really quickly. And I actually recently talked to a publishing agent who said that the graphic novels market is like really growing, like very hot right now. So it seems like there's just a lot of cool work coming out to read. But I'm curious what you think as a person in the field.
Yeah, I think it's definitely really promising where now, graphic novels are seeing more and more as like a just like on the same level as books in the way that it can tell story, and it helps kids who maybe learn a lot through visuals versus through reading, like reading words. And so I think it's like a super powerful medium, and like we're seeing the rise of graphic novels, not just like in the West, but also like manga is so popular. Like I can't even like think of a single friend of mine that hasn't read manga, you know? So I'm super excited to see where it'll go.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Vivek. Yeah, I remember when I was in Taiwan up until recently, we went to this like manga store, and it was in a basement. It was huge, and it was like packed with like youths as well as just like adults, and people were just like, gathered around their favorite graphic novel, like manga series. It was really pretty inspiring, actually. So I'm curious, Laura, so, from talking with you previously, I know that you had a really interesting journey to artistically to writing your art, graphic novel. Like we both went to the same college, actually, Penn.
Yeah.
And but you did do a lot of like artsy stuff at Penn. Do you mind like telling us a little bit about your art journey?
Yeah. I think, I guess like from the beginning, I took some classes like in middle school and high school. I did a bit of AP art in high school, and but I never like had thought of it as like a potential career. Just coming from like very strict Asian parents who are like, oh, like you're gonna go do something very realistic, like make money and stuff and be successful. So I always saw art as more of a hobby, to where I didn't really even apply to art school. And like a lot of my friends in art classes were. So yeah, I went to Penn. I studied business there, like you did, and very quickly realized that it was not what I wanted. It was not what I was looking for.
Very quickly.
Yeah, very
quickly picked up on
by like
the signs, the writing on the wall.
The moment, first week in, and then all these like trust fund babies are like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna be a hedge fund owner, like, and they're like, whatever. I'm just like, what is a hedge fund? What is investment banking? And then like later on be like, no, this is definitely not what I was looking for. I think by like end of freshman year, I wanted to transfer out, actually, like just transfer to a different school. But
yeah, me too.
It was very soul-sucking. But actually like staying was actually what got me more into art, because by sophomore year, I was like so done with everything that I just decided to like, I skipped a lot of class, and I was like, I'm just going to like do what I think will make me happy. And so I started drawing. I like just got a new iPad, and I was drawing, like designing different things, like Penn's buildings, and like doing these like fun little designs. And then I would print them out as stickers and like put them on my laptop. And then when I went to class, I had a bunch of people ask me like where I got them, and like if there was a place to buy them. And so that gave me the idea of like, oh, like I could like actually make money with this. And then so that's kind of like how art started for me, was that like, then I turned it into like art business that like helped pay for tuition. And I did that like for the rest of my time there. And that's honestly like one of the main reasons I probably even stayed, was because I got to not only like do this creative passion of mine and make money, but through that I got to meet a lot of like other artsy people who are interested in like art and entrepreneurship. So yeah, that's kind of like how I got more into art. But I actually didn't start doing comics until probably after I graduated Penn, and I was working at Twitter, and I just really wanted to like do something that was artsy again, because like Twitter was great, but I don't think it was like as creative as I wanted to be in terms of like doing pure art. And so I kind of was able to like do my day job, but also do art on the side, and just like draw comics for fun.
Yeah, I'm curious when you decided to work at Twitter, like when you were basically, I guess I'm assuming like a student at Penn and you were, about to take this job at Twitter. Did you ever have any hesitation about like taking a job that wasn't explicitly art since, like you mentioned, a lot of what you did at Penn was design and art related? Like, did you want to go that route or?
Yeah, at the time, Twitter was my dream job because still, even though I did like the art business and stuff, I still was like, I don't know if this is like an actual, real career. I think I was like brainwashed too much by my parents too, where even though I was like making significant money doing art, I was like, I don't know if I can do that for the rest of my life. So I think the reason Twitter was my dream career was because for the first 3 years when I was at Wharton, like the business school, my parents had put so much pressure for me to go into finance. And then I had, and so like I think Twitter was kind of like my, way out, where like junior year I got a finance internship, and then I was just like, no, like I there's no way. And so I ended up like rejecting that, and then very quickly trying to figure out like what else was out there. And then someone was like, oh, hey, you're like really creative and like you like design, like have you ever like thought about tech? And I know that like tech is like a huge hot thing now for students, but like when I was, that was like probably 2016, 2017 for me. I think at the business school, at least, like it was rare to hear of any business school.
It was very weird.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Like when I was at Penn in 2012, I actually graduated 2012, but my year was 2013. And back then, like it was the weird thing to do to like work in tech. It was a weird thing to do. Like getting a job at Facebook was like, wow, you've really rebelled. Like you didn't, go work at a bank, and like recruiters didn't even go to Penn to recruit I think some, I do think that there were recruiters that would go to Penn for engineering, but definitely not for like design, which was my path, or like PM, like, yeah. So it was definitely like a weird thing to do. Whereas like now I think there's more of a structure to the way that they recruit from universities. Like when I got my job out of college, and I started as a product designer at Dropbox, there was no concept of like levels. It was just like the design manager and then like all the designers. So like I was like the same level as like another another designer who had worked for decades. They didn't have a concept of like university hire, whereas like now it's definitely more of like a structured path, and I think slightly maybe less chaotic. So yeah, like I totally feel you when you say that going the tech route is
I can imagine like your year, what that would have been like. At least for my year, I think I was lucky that APM programs actually existed, and like that was a route to go. But I think because I was in the business school, like no one had even talked about, like I didn't know what a product manager did at all. I kind of just like lucked into it with like senior year, because I was hanging out with like creative folks, and like through a lot of the stuff that I was doing at Penn, which I was also like designing apps and like designing websites. Then I got to meet like the techie students, right? And they're like, oh, like you like design and like you're, you study business and are good at it. And then I majored in statistics. So they're like, oh, like you're great at like data analytics too. If you want to combine all three, you could be a product manager. So that's kind of how I started researching that. And senior year, I ended up applying to Twitter's APM program, and I got in. So that
cool.
was like a dream job for me at the time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Much to like my parents' chagrin.
That's so funny that your parents were shocked. I think recently my mom, like someone asked my mom for advice on becoming a product designer because their parents wanted them to become a product designer.
Really?
And I just remember when I
Oh
was
my
told my
gosh.
parents I was going to be a product designer at a tech company, they were like, "What? Like what?"
Yeah.
You know, like, and now it's
Yeah.
a thing that like Asian parents pressure their kids into pursuing apparently
Right?
because it's now seen
Yeah.
as like a respectable option or something. So
Yeah, we're
yeah,
trailblazing here.
yeah, really
No,
trailblazing
yeah,
here.
same.
Yeah,
My dad, when
yeah.
I told him that I like rejected the finance offer to go into tech, he actually didn't talk to me for I think what 5 months, 6 months.
What? Oh
Yeah, he
wow.
was just like so bewildered by this decision. Um, yeah, so that's how
Yeah.
like I guess they thought of it back then.
Yeah, I want to, throw it back to the chat. And if you're watching this, if you have ever encountered friction from your parents, family, or people around you about like your job, basically, how did you like resolve that if you did? And what's been your approach? My approach is like I recognize most of the time it comes from a place of good intention, but it's also sometimes comes from a place of misunderstanding the like reality of the industry that I'm about to enter. Like I think when I told my parents I was just going to quit my job at Dropbox and become a freelance artist, they were operating off of, their assumptions of what an artist's life would be like. But their information is outdated. Like they don't know what it's like currently as a young person, working in the art field because all their friends are older, so they're going off of like maybe what it was like in China in the like 70s, probably impossible to become a freelance artist, So I try to keep that in mind, and it can be hard though, definitely. Sam says that their parents wondered why he stopped doing art classes when he was younger and didn't find it until their 20s. Yeah, that's very interesting. And if for those who aren't familiar, Sam is our awesome chat moderator for Doodle Therapy. And he's also a really, really talented concept artist. You guys should check out his work on his Behance or just Google his name. Oops, sorry. Sarah says they got stopped from doing art classes, so kept practicing on their own and looked up lessons on YouTube. Good. That's awesome, Sarah. Good for you. That's awesome. And Axel says his parents were the same way, and he would just want his kid to be happy. So, yeah.
Aw,
That's
nice.
very relatable. Yeah. So, we've got about 10 more minutes left on our stream. Actually, more like 8 more minutes. But I just want to say thanks to everyone who's watching us, as well as to Laura for sharing so much about your, book process, showing us like behind the scenes snapshots of your thumbnailing, as well as just like telling us about your story. If you end up drawing along with us and drawing your own memories, whether it's using our template or using your own format, please feel free to share it. You can tag me @byAliceLee if you post it on Twitter, Instagram, or Behance, or you can just message it to me privately. And you can also tag Laura, who is at Hey Laura Gao as well. And I also want to plug our Discord, which is creativecuties.net. You are totally invited to share it there as well if you're looking for like not the whole internet, but like a private group. Our Discord's like just a really wholesome, fun, supportive place where we celebrate all things cute aesthetics. So please feel free to join if that appeals to you. So I'm curious, Laura, like when you look to the future, how do you see yourself continuing with your art career? Do you have like next goals? You mentioned that you want to work on another your second book project? Do you see yourself ever going back to tech or bridging the, two interests of like tech and art?
Yeah, I do have a second book that I'm working on right now, with also HarperCollins. This one will
Exciting.
be this one will be a queer woman love story. Hopefully a happy one, because we definitely need more of those. So I'm super stoked to be able to like write that and draw for it. And then after that, I haven't made like concrete plans. I try not to plan too far in advance, but I would love to just like keep making comics. I would love to, branch into other creative stuff. Like if I wanted to do maybe like comedic writing or like do animations, I think that would be really awesome too.
That's cool. I could totally see that, like you being a comedy writer, for sure. Like based on your tweets.
Oh man, yeah, that's like always been a dream, is to write for SNL. So if anyone from SNL is watching,
yeah, let's manifest it, you guys. We're like speaking it into the universe. Yeah, I'm a big believer in speaking out loud. What your goals are, even if they seem like far-fetched or far away. Like, I think just by like articulating them, sometimes that has like a lot of power.
Yeah, I do this thing where like every year I write to myself for like my upcoming birthday, and I kind of just like tell myself the things I'm looking forward to, like maybe goals I have, like where I hope future me will be by the next birthday. And that's been really great to like kind of manifest it by like writing it out loud, and just like seeing how far I've come every year.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are some, like right now where you are in life, what are some questions, or I like to ask people this, what are some questions that you're trying to figure out right now?
Questions. Ooh.
I can share some of the questions.
I think one thing Yeah.
Oh no, that was just in case you couldn't think.
Yeah, why not? I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, and I might have asked this question a little bit too close to the end of the stream, as we've got just 3 minutes left. But some open-ended questions for me are like, where next do I want to explore artistically? Where should I live? That's a big question since I just moved back from Taipei. And do I want to expand my studio by bringing on like an artist representative, like a manager, basically? So these are some questions in my mind. But yeah, what about yourself? It's just in the next like 3 minutes.
Mine are, I also something similar, like where do I see myself living? Like now that I'm a nomadic artist, I can't be anywhere. Like tried Taiwan, I've gone like kind of all over the States. Would love to like maybe go to Japan or China or Europe and other places. So that's like a question. Another one is, this is something I've been working on over the past year or two, is figuring out like who I am as a, I guess like as someone in like relationships. I think for as long as, just like, I feel like this happens with a lot of people where growing up, you're taught how to like maximize your skills or like maximize your looks or like maximize careers and like all this. But I feel like, at least personally for myself, I was never really taught to just kind of like how to be a good friend or partner, or like how to just even be a good friend to yourself. And so that's something that I'm currently working on, is like a lot of that emotional stuff with being a good friend to yourself.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. So we are at the end of our day one stream. Thanks, Laura, for joining us. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thanks for joining us on our emo day. We will not be emo tomorrow. But sometimes memories can be emo. especially of middle school. So, if you ended up drawing along with us, once again, please feel free to share it with us on social media. You can find Laura at Hey Laura Gao, and feel free to tag me at by Alice Lee. I love seeing people's doodles. It makes my day. If you are watching this not live and you have questions, also feel free to ask and just tag me. I'm happy to, respond. And we will be back here tomorrow at the same time, 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time with Laura. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, afternoon, morning, depending on where you are. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.